today's Membership Monday is going to be a little different than most. Usually around this time, we would open things up to live questions from you guys and then spend our hour talking about whatever you guys want to have answered. But today, since we've been talking about it behind the scenes a bunch, we've been talking about it loosely in these kind of segments, we want to address all our thoughts about Overwatch 2. And it's been enough time now that I think some of our initial reactions have settled down, and we can take a more level-headed take from what we saw at the developer showcase that we saw a couple weeks ago. So yeah, just to recap, a brief recap at least of everything we learned from that stream that happened a little while ago. Main thing, obviously, Overwatch 2 PvP is going to be 5v5. They're eliminating one of the tank slots, so it's going to be one tank, 2 DPS, 2 support on each team, which obviously is going to throw a wrench into current Overwatch, and it's going to change the way the game is played at a pretty significant amount, I would say. In addition to this, obviously, they're most likely reworking every single tank. We didn't get to see everything from the stream, but we saw things like Reinhardt having more control over his charge, being able to cancel it, and having 2 fire strikes. We saw things like Zarya having 2 bubbles that share a cooldown. What else? Was anyone else crazily changed? I think Diva was the same.
Winston has a fucking sniper rifle.
Winston's got a long range charging beam. Yeah, they gave Winston a Glock. And yeah, some things we learned before as well from BlizzCon Online is the new role passives. So the role passives, in case anyone doesn't know, is tanks are going to be displaced less. So knockback effects like Lucio's Boop or Pharah's Concussion Blast will affect tanks less than other characters. Basically, everyone's going to get Reinhardt passive. And they're also going to give less ultimate charge when shot at, which I thought was actually probably one of the more interesting changes. But obviously going to be hard to tell how much it actually impacts the game until we get to play with it. For the DPS, their role passive is they basically just get to move faster. So similar to how Tracer and Genji have higher move speeds than the rest of the cast, all the DPS are going to now have faster move speed than the entire cast. I believe they announced that Tracer and Genji are going to keep their passives and still be faster than other DPS, but DPS across the board are going to be faster. And then everyone's favorite, at least from what I could tell on Reddit, supports are getting a passive heal. So everyone's getting Mercy passive on the support lineup. This is going to... I remember them talking about this, so they definitely confirmed this is going to stack with Mercy's passive healing and stuff like Zenyatta's shields recharging. But after a couple seconds out of combat or not taking damage, supports will passively heal up. So no more Anna's needing to nade their feet to get back to full HP and stuff like that, or Moira's throwing their heal orb just for themselves. And what I'm anticipating, at least from the support lineup, it means more people being ignored by their support partner. So that's great.
You're fine. You'll be okay. Just hide behind that wall for a few seconds.
Okay. I'll be busy like speed boosting across the map in their backline. You guys gotta heal yourselves now. Have fun. Other than all that stuff, we got a lot of speculation into some stuff they might be changing. Like I mentioned, they're probably reworking every single tank. There's probably a lot of heroes they're reworking and stuff like that. But one of the most notable ones is they announced they're reworking how crowd control is going to work. Maybe that means taking some crowd control abilities out of the game or changing the way stuns and hard CC works in the game. What were your guys' takeaways from what they talked about crowd control specifically?
I think that the game needs more soft crowd control and then less egregious stuns. I think things like roots are okay. I think things like silences are okay, like Sombra. I don't like the hard stuns that they had for so long. I think that McCree flashbang was really cool and fine because that was an instant and then the game kept going, right?
Yeah.
McCree flashbang happened and then the game kept going. But with Rock, somebody's on their ass for the next 20 fucking minutes. Like if somebody gets bashed by Brig, they're also going to get conked, and like that's going to keep them out of the fight for a while. I think that the direction they had with CC in the beginning is really cool. I like Sleep. I think Sleep is a really cool piece of CC because of how it interacts with the rest of the game. But when they just did stuff like and then you just get to make the guy not play the game for 10 minutes. Like I don't like that. I really don't like that kind of stuff. I think it's better for the direction they're going in. Obviously, I want more specifics, But based off of what they said, I think I'll like it.
Mm-hmm.
So you think like brain dead aiming abilities don't require any aim at all, like flashbang and Briggs Bash are more acceptable than like Sigma hitting a rock?
No, I thought that flashbang is acceptable not because of the skill required, but because of the impact that it has. And then Brig feels really weird to me because I think Bash is okay, but with Whip Shot, it kind of fucks with the rest of like how it should be balanced because then it continues to CC you afterward.
Okay, that's fair. I think that it's great that they're reworking all of these abilities. So I've recently been taking a conquest into the tank lineup, and I understand why people do not like these abilities because there is almost zero counterplay around them because or else you're just going to be pressing S and you're going to be sitting in the spawn if you're trying to avoid them.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't. There's no avoiding them. There's no counterplay to half of them.
Yeah, it's just stop playing the game buttons.
It just feels bad. It feels really bad. So I totally get it. I see why people don't play tank very much because it's not fun. And I completely agree with Gunther though with things like sleep, like excellent. And it's you can totally hear he's a Dota player when he's talking about roots and silences. But I completely agree. These kind of soft CCs that are that are good abilities, but don't completely stop you from doing things. Are good. So I'm excited to see what kind of things that they come up with. I mean, flashbang. Why don't you just make it a flashbang where you just like can't see something? I mean,
there's nothing like that in Overwatch.
Yeah.
So
like a blind. I think a blind would be
like
really
a blind.
Cool. Yeah, even if it's just for like half a second.
I know. CS:GO, Valorant, but I mean they are. It is a thing. So
yeah, sightlines are still important in Overwatch.
Not like Valorant copied like a billion abilities from Overwatch, so it's not like we can't take an ability from CS:GO or Valorant.
Yeah. The biggest thing about CC is that it either needs to have a ridiculously if it's going to be like a fast strong CC, it needs to have a very long cooldown, and if it doesn't have a very long cooldown, it needs to have like counterplay before the ability is used. Like I think that Junkrat trap is honestly the best example of good CC in this game because it's there and you see it, and if you step into it, that's your fault.
Yeah,
it needs to set up.
You're not wrong.
It takes time to activate, and then if you step into it, then that's your own fault. It has counterplay to it. But there's some CC in this game. I think that like Brig is probably the most egregious example of just how it's like the cooldown isn't very long for Bash. It hits you and then you have to like keep dealing with it, and there's not a lot of counterplay to it other than don't be close, lol. Which is like not how this game really works.
I think for me, it's not the fact that like I think you hit the nail right on his head when you talked about how flashbang back in the day felt okay because it was like the only thing and it was instant. Now that flashbang combos with Brig Bash, combos with Sig Rock, combos into 5 other things back to back, CC has just definitely gotten out of control. And you're right, with the introduction of Brig, this made everything just more obviously worse when it came to getting stunned.
Yeah. She was the preem worst thing when it came out.
How did that hero get released? Whatever.
I still think that like there needs to be some sort of counterplay to hyper aggression in the form of some form of CC. But I definitely think it needs to be tuned down extremely low to the point where maybe flashbang and stun like don't actually stun, but they just interrupt or something like that. Like if you could still like interrupt Winston's jump and he just falls straight down or something, or still be able to like bash Moira out of coalescence, I think that's good, but not burn a tank 100-0 because you landed a flashbang,
Yeah.
And we already saw one of the directions they're moving with CC. Probably one of the few changes we saw is that May Freeze is no longer going to actually stun. It's only going to slow from now on.
Yeah.
So I think they're trying to keep some of the core mechanics in the game. Oh, that was some very loud thunder out my window. But they're trying to keep some of the core mechanics still there, but they're tuning down the CC aspect of it. So I don't see them like completely reworking Brig, but I see them reworking the way stuns interact with heroes. And like maybe it's literally just an instant to the point where it's barely a stun at all and just an interrupt. I think that could still be interesting as a character.
Yeah, I actually don't like the May change because I think for high level play, it's a huge buff.
Really?
Like most of the time in high level play, I feel like you don't need the freeze in order to hit your shots.
It's not the freeze, it's the threat of the freeze though, isn't it?
That's true to an extent. That is definitely true. I just feel like overall it's gonna make May stronger.
Hmm, that's interesting.
Mm,
I mean, it's
I mean,
it's it's so it's so speculative at this point. Like, there's
yeah, I
no
agree.
correct takes at this point.
I mean,
But
as
yeah,
far as I see it, is like right now she slows and then they freeze, and then Overwatch 2 she just slows and there's no freeze after. So I
yeah,
think I would argue that current May is going to be stronger just because you can then freeze them if you
yeah.
want.
My thing is like, are you ever gonna force something with just your damage and slow? Because like you can force a Rhine to hold up his shield. You can force a Zarya to use her bubble. You can force a tank to boost away or jump away because the threat of freeze is there. But
Yeah,
without
Yeah.
I
that,
didn't. Yeah, I didn't really consider that actually. That's
mhm.
true.
Because yeah, thinking
Um,
about like how May's played most recently, like just in brawl comps, like you'll just be holding M1 over the Reinhardt so that he's not allowed to swing. Now he'll be allowed to swing. He'll just be a little bit slower for it, and of course taking damage.
Yep.
yeah. To me, it feels like my thought process was like bad players need the freeze in order to hit shots.
Oh,
Good
okay.
players
Yeah,
don't
that
need the
interaction's not
freeze.
there anymore.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
for like
Yeah.
the average ranked player base too, like May's gonna be way better because you can just do pure damage and still be annoying and still be super survivable too. Oh
Yeah,
hi.
I think looking at it in terms of like a team based thing, you definitely make a lot more sense.
Hmm.
I was just thinking about it in terms of like good players hit shots and don't need freeze. Like
Yeah.
that's as far as my brain
Yeah.
went.
Yeah. My thoughts went immediately to like the tank
Yeah,
duels,
the tank
like Reinhardt
interactions.
and freezing him. I didn't think, oh, I can't hit
Yeah.
shot unfrozen Ana now, but whatever.
Mhm. I mean, now you'll just kill her with the freeze because it does like double the damage it does now or something.
Smile.
So yeah, talking about the difference between like what ranked might look like versus what competitive might look like, we did get to see some 5v5 gameplay from the devs from the internal test team. Let's just say it left a lot to be desired when it came to what we saw from them playing. I think the average SR in that lobby was probably somewhere around mid to low gold. So there's probably a lot of problems that maybe they're not even seeing, but it's too hard to speculate on that, but that we definitely didn't see just from watching them play. So are there any things that really stuck out to you guys that just felt like this would be a much bigger problem if pros were playing the game when you were watching the gameplay?
Yeah, you watched that Widowmaker gameplay? I guarantee you that if this was if you had like say it was an owl level lobby, it would boil down to sniper matchups.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One
And then
shot
that's it.
KOs.
Yeah. I feel like it would really just be like who has the better sniper players? Because you don't have those the ability
don't
of
have
an
the
off
mitigation,
tank to shut you don't have the ability to shut those things down. So to me watching that gameplay I was like if you had good players playing this right now like
Everyone would be dead.
everyone would be
all
dead.
the time.
Like I have a thing in my coaching sessions where sometimes I see somebody do something and I'm like, you should be dead right now. That guy should have hit that shot. And
That was the
that's
whole
like
stream.
that was the whole stream. The entire stream was like people not getting punished for obvious egregious mistakes that they were making. And it made me be like, this is the most painful thing I've ever seen because you should be dead.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you have to remember, right? It's gold players playing against gold players. So no, they shouldn't be dead because it's against other gold players. They're not going to punish it. If you are playing good
sure.
players, you should be dead. I agree.
Yeah, sure.
I completely agree though with the sniper thing. That was my first thought. Though we do have to give them credit because they already noted like we're looking very carefully at the snipers because we are aware that this could be an issue with better players. So at least I don't think that they're completely blind to that idea of remove a tank that can test a sniper, move a character that doesn't get one shot, and the snipers are gonna be fine. So I think they're aware of the issue. Other than that, it's like I have no idea how the game's gonna play because it's just gold players running around. Look like deathmatch, dude.
Yeah.
It's like it looked like there was like no team play, there was no coordinated ults, there was like nothing. It was literally just like around the payload and they're like shooting at each other. Like, oh, look how much more fun Overwatch looks now. No, this is what a standard gold lobby looks like in the first place. It's like, okay.
I feel like their reasoning for 5v5 felt really weird to me. Like it was just so chaotic with 6 people. Like learning to function in that chaos felt like an integral skill set for Overwatch. I think it was fine that things have been chaotic. Like learning to play the game in that regard is good.
Yeah, I mean, I think without a doubt the game is becoming more shallow. We're losing some depth. I mean, just taking out a core mechanic of tank synergy of a sixth player is not going to make the game as intense or as deep as it currently is. I think it'd be very hard to do that without changing some other core mechanics of Overwatch. And yeah, when I was watching and just looking at the professional developer gameplay, the only thing that was going through my mind was just like, I really don't see how one tank is ever going to do anything. Because time to kill in Overwatch right now, especially compared to like release from what I remember, feels relatively short. It feels pretty easy to burn down a tank with 2 tanks right now. And obviously they're still working on changes. Obviously everything is still in production. But the fact that they were showing this kind of gameplay without major reworks to the tanks, like, yeah, Reinhardt has 2 fire strikes, Zarya has 2 self bubbles, great. Like, how are they ever going to stand anywhere? And how are we ever going to see team fights again when long range hit scan damage still exists? So even without snipers, like even if Widowmaker and Hanzo and Ashe didn't exist, like you would just be shooting at people across the map, even through like mid ranges, and just like burning down people before they can even close the distance on you. Like Reinhardt just not going to be a character. Zarya is just not going to be a character. It doesn't seem even possible, at least in the current balanced state that they had things showing us. It didn't seem possible to play tank. Unless you were playing like maybe Ball or Hog, who just play very individually anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. It felt really like weird to me. Like going back to my point of like sniper players or just DPS in general, it's like it felt really weird to me to like see a guy miss 4 shots on a standing still Roadhog and be like, I just be like, this game is over.
Yeah, it's gonna be obviously like, yeah. I keep saying this, but like there's so many changes they're gonna make. Hopefully, that this shouldn't be a good idea of what Overwatch 2 is going to look like.
I 100% agree.
Fingers crossed, knock on wood, you know?
Bro, there's no way.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm still in denial.
It's like you're gonna wake up from a coma.
Like I'm gonna wake up and it's all gonna have been a dream.
I don't think this stuff was ready to be shown yet. It's just the whole player base was starving. Aaron Keller's like they're chomping their bits at the gates, like they're shaking Blizzard HQ headquarters. we gotta give them something. And it's like, okay, guys, we're 5v5. Let's make a couple changes. Because like, you know, how long have they been working on Overwatch 2? Supposed to be working on it. Like what, 3 years or something? Like a long time. They announced it first in 2019.
Yeah.
And I assume they wouldn't announce that they haven't been working on it for at least a year. So I mean, you know, 3 years, right? So that this whole thing tells me like most of the development team has been on like the PvE side of things. Absolutely. And it feels like this PvP stuff has been thrown together like I would almost say like within the last 6 months. Like I'm not even joking.
Yeah,
so it was like every single thing like they said about Overwatch 2 PvP, they added on after it. Oh, but it's still in development. We're still working on it, you know, where there's still lots of changes to be made. Like they had that little extra thing added on, their little like, I don't know, they're like a word, I don't know what the word is for it, but you know, to make sure things are gonna be fine. And added that on to every single thing that they said about Overwatch 2. So like they can refer back to, well, we said it wasn't, you know, it wasn't finished then, you know, but we said it. And so I'm not feeling this whole thing. Like I love the idea. I love the idea that they're trying to make the game funner, make the game faster, you know, for everybody involved, make it so tanks don't just have to sit there and stand still. But it's clear that they have no idea, in my opinion, the balance yet.
I think the most worrying part to me was like they were asked so many questions and so many times the answer was, we're really not sure.
I agree.
Like
it was that.
They every like reading through like any of like the community questions or anything like that, people would be like, hey, so when you're doing 5v5, what's up with this? And they'd be like, we'll do something.
We're doing something.
It was a lot of like, know that we're thinking about it. We that's something that we will consider. And it's like, so you don't have an answer. And And that made me really worried. Like, I feel like based off of, like, I love all of the changes that they're doing, actually, except for 5v5. Every single other change that they've mentioned, I've been like, yeah, this is really cool. I really like this. This is good. This is a good direction to take the game in. And then they're like, and then we're also going to make it 5v5. It's like, what are you doing? Why? I feel like there is some, like, I'm not going to go conspiracy theorist on you, but like, I feel like there has to be another reason. There has to be another reason other than the game was too complicated. No, it fucking wasn't.
Well, you know the real reason is just no one wants to play tank. This is true in every single game ever.
Then make it more fun to play tank.
That's what they're attempting to do.
That's what they're attempting to do by making tanks, like, in my opinion, more like
big,
DPS.
Yeah, and the big brawler, and like who's really nuts on the team. They got to make him OP. So like, I mean that kind of segues into your next point.
Yeah, depending on how balance works out. Exactly. Yeah, but just to play devil's advocate a little bit here and to give Blizzard some of the benefit of the doubt, because we really don't know yet. And I was reading this theory, I think on Reddit, which I know is a dangerous place to look for information, but there were people talking about, like, what if what they showed us was what they were working on 6, 9, 12 months ago? What if what they showed us in this developer update was not where they're intending the game to go, but what is most currently like the live product, so people don't freak out too much, because they have in the past been clear that they're not willing to show everything because they don't like the public perception that it brings them sometimes.
Tinfoil hat.
Yeah. So what if what they brought out in the developer stream was not where they're planning the product to be, but where it's closest to the live product currently? And that's why we're not seeing bigger changes and stuff like that to the tanks. The only things
says that they've been working on 5v5 for a year, and they still don't have answers to some very simple questions, and that makes me nervous.
Yeah, that would be fair.
I feel like whatever way this is sliced, it makes me go, I don't know if I like that.
Yeah, it's
like whatever way you put this, it red flags.
Yeah. End of the day, like most we can say, and I think we're all in agreement, like if the game goes into anywhere close its current balance state into 5v5, it's not going to be a good game. They need to do some major work, and they need to find a better direction with where they're trying to take their solo tank role in order to make it something that's fun to play and something that's still Overwatch.
Yeah.
That's my biggest takeaway. They've got some work to do.
Yeah, I think you said it very well, Ticketio, like when it was first announced that, like, for better or for worse, Overwatch 2 is going to be a different game.
Yeah. And
that makes me quite sad.
Not saying it's going to be a bad game, but it's going to be very different.
Overwatch 2 might be great. It could there's a big possibility that Overwatch 2 is a great game. But it's
scary.
It's scary. It's terrifying. Like to get like a little like not like too like serious and emotional, but like one of my friends who is an off tank player, like he was like out, and I had to like break the news to him that like there's only going to be one tank, and I'm worried for your role afterward. And he was like, what? Like having that conversation with him was not something I enjoyed doing, because I had to be the guy who's like, I'm sorry, but in Overwatch 2, there's a good chance you might not get a job, or you're going to have to compete twice as hard for all of your jobs. And that was that was a really shitty conversation to have.
Yeah, of course. I do want to talk about how this potentially impacts the pro scene, but before we get to that, I want to just sort of like get your guys' impressions of what, like, based on what we saw, based on what kind of potential changes we might foresee coming. What do you actually think tanks are going to look like in Overwatch 2? How do you think they're going to feel? Are they going to be overpowered brawlers that are just 1v5ing, or are they going to be little wet noodles trying to walk across the map and getting domed?
I think they have to be OP. There's no way that they're just going to have to be OP. Otherwise, they're going to feel like crap to play, because it's only one of you. And so, like whatever they said, like, okay, now there's 2 healers that can just heal the 1 tank, and so you don't need to heal 2 tanks. And still, it's like
there's 2 DPS only shooting 1 tank.
Yeah, and I don't. I think it's going to feel a little bit better, but the tank's still going to have to be OP. I think there's going to be lots of tank diffs going on. Personally,
I think. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Gunther.
No, I have nothing to add.
I was just going to say, I think it's going to be very, very hard for them to balance, because this is something they've been trying to do for both pro play and for the ranked experience. Because I think it's going to be somewhat easy to make tanks fun in ranked play, but very hard to make them both quote unquote balanced while still being viable in pro play. I think it's going to be very easy for them to be fun in ranked, but nearly unplayable in pro play. Some of the stuff we mentioned, like they looked brawly as hell in the developer stream in gold. You take that into pro play and tanks are not going to do anything. But if you overpower them too much so that they're keeping up in pro play, they're just going to destroy every single lobby in ranked at the lower levels. They're going to be unkillable death machines walking around the map. It's going to be like when Hog was buffed to one-shot Winston, you know?
Oh yeah. I feel like going 5v5, the only way they can do it is make them like MMO tanks, where they have a bunch of tools to stay alive and not much else.
And nothing else.
Yeah, they don't really do any damage.
Like,
just live.
But this isn't fucking World of Warcraft. You can't pull aggro. They're just gonna shoot somebody else.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I remember back in early Overwatch when people would talk about Hog and how good of a tank he is, because it's like, oh well, Hog makes the enemy team focus on him. He pulls aggro, and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? They're just gonna shoot somebody else. Like,
just look away.
Just look at somebody else. And like that scares me. That really scares me. Because people don't have aggro. You don't have threat meters. They just shoot who they want to shoot. And if you're not somebody that they deem is worth their time to kill, they're gonna just shoot somebody else.
My worry too is, everyone loves Reinhardt, and I think the developers love Reinhardt. He's the flagship tank for this game.
Yeah.
If they try to balance around Reinhardt being the most viable tank again, it's going to be terrible.
Because have struggles.
In solo tank, Reinhardt should be the worst tank in the game. He should be like Little Mac in Smash. He should be like very good at the one thing he does, but very easy to play around that one thing that he does. Obviously, he's short range. He has big shield. He walk around. That's it. He can't mitigate a lot of damage. He can't close distances very well. And without a separate tool to help him do either of those things, he should be the worst tank in the game. But there's a very high potential for Blizzard to say, hey, everyone loves Reinhardt. Everyone wants to swing a big hammer. Let's buff the shit out of him so that he can do whatever he wants in every single game.
So what? Yeah, no, it just feels weird to me. I have something that I kind of want to talk about later, but like, it just feels so weird. So I was just thinking about like this. So I have to talk about like game history for a second, I mean, if that's okay. So in the transition from Dota to League, Dota didn't have specified roles. Everyone kind of fell into a role based off of their farm priority and how much gold and experience they essentially deserve to get based off of how well they scaled in the game. And then people kind of naturally fell into these roles. When League of Legends came out, people wanted to do these specific things, and then the developers of League said, oh, we'll make a dedicated jungle role, and you can play these heroes in the jungle, and they're really good at jungling. And you want to be an AD carry? Well, we're going to design this hero specifically to be an AD carry. And they did stuff like that. I'm maybe theorizing, maybe afraid, maybe expecting, maybe just speaking out of my ass that this could be a potential first step to, instead of a 3-role system of tank, damage, support, of a 5-role system where they put heroes into those specific roles. And they say, all right, we got one main tank, we got one guy who's either a beefy DPS or more of an off tank, and then we got one guy who's a dedicated hit scan, and then we got one guy who's, you know, maybe some support or like flexible DPS, and then we got one guy who's just a main support. Like, that's what I feel like it could be, and that might be a really interesting way to balance the game. But just to me, when they said, oh, we're going into, you know, when they started talking about brawlers and moving heroes between roles, that's what kind of triggered for me as something that maybe isn't the best direction to take the game, but could be really interesting.
Could be very
I think
viable,
that's interesting.
Because I heard people talking about, like, what if you do a, like, you only have one person of each role, and then you have 2 people who can flex. Like, that's what some people on Reddit were saying. So I was thinking, well, the natural evolution of that is you divide these heroes up more and more and more into 5 roles specifically. I don't know if that's the best direction, but I feel like that is at least an interesting direction that I kind of thought of could happen.
I'm trying to think of what hero selection would look like.
Yeah, right?
It makes sense to me if you would have, like, free picks, so no longer role queue, but you limit to 1 tank per team.
I was actually thinking it would be a more specific role queue where
Yeah,
you would
like,
queue for one of the
like
5
there's
roles.
5 roles, and like,
so, like,
say
the-
what?
Making the sorry to
Yeah.
cut you off.
You're
Making
okay.
the
You're
comparison
okay.
to League, people will absolutely pick off roles for their designated lanes or something like this,
Yeah.
right? So people
Yeah,
are going to
you're
want to
right.
do that in Overwatch. People in Valorant play double, triple, quadruple duelist in every single ranked game, right? And they want to do that because they want to play their hero the way they want to play it. So the way I see that translating to Overwatch is basically making everyone back to open queue, but as soon as someone locks a tank, no one else can pick a tank.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That sounds like dog.
Yeah, and what somebody said in the member general is very correct. There aren't enough heroes in the game for that to
Yeah.
exist yet. And I wholeheartedly agree that there's not enough heroes
Yeah,
in the game for
You're
that.
right.
But I
The
think
way-
going forward, that's the direction it could go.
Yeah, I'm picturing more of a
Legal-
model like Valorant's actually, where they're not
Really?
like pigeonholed into their, but they have like titles like Duelist, like Phoenix and Jet are good at finding openings and trading frags and stuff like that. Sentinels are good at holding down objectives and stuff like that. And you don't want a team of all Duelists, you don't want a team of all Sentinels, but the game doesn't stop you from doing that. And then you have
Yeah.
like the other
Mhm.
roles like dedicated smokers and stuff like that.
Kind of, well, the way I pictured what Gunther was saying is like have your main tank, right? So they say I think Reinhardt, Orisa, Winston, like Sigma maybe, and then
I
like
was
you have
thinking,
off
like,
tank.
Wrecking Ball.
Yeah, maybe Wrecking Ball too. And then like you rework like Zarya and Diva to be like the beefy DPS, and then
The
throw
brawlers.
in like
Like
Doomfist.
Reaper and
Yeah,
Doom and
and
May.
Reaper, Doom, and May
Mhm.
as like that second like DPS, and then have
Yeah.
like your flankers and hit scan on like the third your other DPS, and like you could queue, maybe you could queue as both of those tanks. I don't know, and that allows you to still have like kind of a Diva Zarya with a tank, but
Yeah,
like
and to
obviously
still have that
nerf
synergy.
them back nerf them back though to obviously not be tank level,
Mhm.
like off tank level, but could
And
be interesting.
We already have really good examples of the game of synergy outside of just tank duos, right? We have stuff like Lucio Speed and Reinhardt. We have stuff like Doomfist with Zarya Bubbles.
Yeah.
And these types of engages.
Yeah.
Maywall with Reinhardt. Those are probably some of the best examples. But like there's DPS that are better suited for tank jobs than some tanks. And I don't know if that requires like shifting what their title or what their role is in game. But definitely maintaining as many of those synergies as possible, I think, is beneficial for Overwatch because that's what's fun for a lot of people in Overwatch is making big coordinated outplays by using not only their individual hero but by coordinating with their team and finding ways to overlap their resources and their skill sets for explosive plays. That's what Overwatch does better than any other
Yeah.
FPS out there, in my opinion.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
it feels amazing in Overwatch that like you are your one player who has your one impact, but you are also in this web of things that interacts with every other thing.
Yeah.
I think it's so cool how it's not just what you do in terms of what your impact is, but it's how your small impact has this butterfly effect over the rest of the game. I think that's so cool. And I feel like by losing a tank, you're losing a little bit of that.
Yeah. And in addition to being awesome and complex, like it's also unfortunately very hard to understand for a lot of people. And I mean, that's part of the reason why we have jobs. But
Yeah.
I think that's also part of the reason they're going in this direction is they want to simplify that web, which to us at a high level, looking at the game and like working with high level players and stuff like that is a detriment to the game. But for the average player, it's probably a benefit.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. I don't personally agree with that perspective, but I can see it's somewhat valid for if they're trying to appeal to their largest share of players, which is the average ranked player, the casual player in quick play, in arcade and stuff like that. They want to make sure they're having fun and they're coming back to the game.
Yeah, I think that's important. Really important.
Yeah, of course. You need a healthy ecosystem for any title like this.
Doesn't
Yeah,
matter how competitive your game is. No one's gonna watch it. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Sure, you got 3K people watching you on YouTube, but it's a very competitive game. Cool. Nice.
Mhm.
You're gonna win like a hamburger for winning the tournament or something.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Jack in the Box sponsor. The winner gets 5 hamburgers on
Yeah.
on us.
Yeah, like there have been some amazingly competitive titles which haven't taken off the ground as esports because of just like barrier to entry, or people don't like watching the
Watching
game
it.
necessarily. Like
Mhm.
Tribes Ascend, I fucking love Tribes Ascend, but nobody played Tribes, and so nobody watched
So
Tribes
here we
tournaments, so
are.
there was zero esports
And
scene,
here we
right?
are.
Like, so here we are. That's kind of what's been happening with Overwatch a little bit. I think the issues with Overwatch's competitive scene have more so been like Blizzard's negligence as opposed to like actual issues. Because anytime this is a bit of a separate conversation, but anytime there's like, oh, a game in the Blizzard client, it gains like 10,000 viewers on the YouTube player. So it's like, and that's from people watching it, not just from having the Blizzard client open in the background.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So like I would, if they were to, like, this is just like a separate conversation, but just like if they put more work into promoting their competitive scene, I think a lot of the issues we're seeing with the whole like Overwatch dead kind of conversations, like
Yeah.
it's just that nobody knows where to watch this game. Nobody knows.
Yeah. From a viewer perspective, like all the problems with the Overwatch League have nothing to do with the actual Overwatch League. They have to do with the way the game is presented to everyone else and the amount of players they have coming into their game.
Yeah.
With more players, this problem solved. With better marketing, this problem solved. It has nothing to actually do with the Overwatch League itself. Like it's a great product and it's been getting better
I agree.
every year.
I agree.
But if no one's watching, it doesn't matter.
Yep. It's
Not
not
to
like
say no one's watching.
Valorant.
There's a ton of
Yeah.
people watching.
Yeah, but it's not like Valorant. The last tournament had some breaking broadcast and advertisement. It's just regular. It's just more people play that game. Right now.
Yep.
More people, it's easier to watch too.
Yeah. And Shroud was co-streaming.
Yep, and
There we
everyone
go.
is co-streaming. Everyone is co-streaming.
Yeah. But yeah, back to Overwatch 2 stuff. Brought this up briefly before, Gunther, but want to talk about how this is going to impact the pro scene. And a lot of people, myself included, kind of ran to Twitter and be like, okay, goodbye off tanks, enjoy your paycheck while you can. You won't have a job next year, or all these kind of takes like this. I have a lot of opinions that I've been thinking about pretty heavily since we heard this announcement, but what are your guys' takes on, I guess, first question, like, are off tanks just going to lose their jobs?
I do feel like kind of strong. I just want to put one thing out there, and I'll let you guys discuss. I think anyone that says like people aren't going to be hurt by this, completely wrong. They're because like people play more than one hero. So if there's only one role, like that can, and you have 3 tanks, that can easily be condensed down to 2 people to cover those tanks. Don't be like, oh, we need to specialize, dude. Look at the freaking Vancouver Titans. They're like barely have the roster limit. Like there's gonna be Overwatch League teams that are doing that. Like, okay, we're just getting the watch limit for 5 people now.
Yeah.
Like so, no matter whatever way that you put it, there's going to be less Overwatch League tank positions in Overwatch League. No doubt in my mind.
I mean, look at the DPS role, the most diverse cast in the entire game, and many teams still have a starting 2 that never swap off, barring injury or stuff like that.
And how do you reasonably expect one player to know how to play every single tank at an Overwatch League level? The reason that teams have 4 or 5 DPS players is because they keep them ready to learn to be good at certain heroes or certain hero pools in case that's what's meta.
Yeah.
Like saying oh yeah, you, our single tank player, must be prepared to swap to any of the tanks in the game and play them at an Overwatch League level. That's ridiculous. You can't expect that of people.
People will do it though.
They'll do it, but like
because
people are crazy.
Yeah,
they don't want to spend money.
At the very least, there's going to be more competition for the tank slots.
Yeah,
and bare minimum changes.
Bare minimum. I agree that they're like minimum. You should have 2 tanks. I agree. Like minimum, you should have 2 tanks. But I would not be surprised if there's teams that straight up roll with one tank player.
Yep.
And again, these are probably not the best funded teams and not the most flexible teams, but it's going to happen. It's going to mean these teams aren't hiring for that other position that they were before.
Yeah, and I actually think main tank players' job is more in trouble than off tank.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, because if they're buffing main tank heroes, right? Off tank players are usually more mechanically skilled, and then the skill that came with main tank is learning how not to get punished for what you're trying to do. The reason that people are like bad at main tank is because they don't know how to make the plays they want to make in a safe way. And if you're buffing tanks to a point where they can just do whatever, then that safety doesn't necessarily matter. And so people who are more mechanically skilled will shine through.
Hmm. I was
Yeah.
going to say, rather than opting for like a deeper tank line, my initial impression was that DPS players, especially ones potentially subbing out on teams, would be filling in that tank role because it's going to be a role that's more defined by mechanical prowess now than it is currently, I suppose, where it's more defined by team synergy and not getting punished, like you're saying, Gunther, and being able to
Yep.
read situations better. Main tank, especially right now, is such a unique skill set for players because it comes with so many other jobs beyond just playing your hero. And I think all those other jobs, like between team synergy, between coordinating with the rest of your team, communication roles, and all these kind of things, those are not going to matter nearly as much as just performing on your hero with solo tank.
Oh yeah.
So I think mechanical prowess and historically the players with the best mechanics, other than I guess Violet, are typically DPS players. So I could see off tanks, like especially ones that got their fame from synergizing really well because of a tank duo, might be more fearful for their positions.
Yeah, I think that there are two kinds of off-tank players. There are people who are very quiet and they do their job well, and then there are people who demand resources and attempt to go above and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the people who demand resources and attempt to go above and beyond are going to be in a much better place.
Yeah.
But like that's somebody like Space, right? Space demands resources and then he does things with those resources. He demands to be have someone with him on an off angle. He demands to have like healing or something like that, and he does stuff with those resources. Players like don't get me wrong, I'm saying this about play style, not about skill. Choyobin is fucking amazing. He's amazing top to bottom and he will find a team no matter what happens. But players like Choyobin who are just quietly very good are going to be definitely in a worse position because they're not the people who demand resources and do all these crazy things. Shoyobin is quietly a very good player and he does his job very, very well.
But he doesn't make the same impact that you might hope from a solo tank player.
Yeah, exactly. If I was having somebody as a solo tank, I'd rather have Space because Space has a very specific playstyle. Choyobin, phenomenal player, and like I said, I think he's going to do great, but his playstyle just doesn't necessarily lend to that kind of play.
Yeah, for a lot of these players, it's going to mean learning to approach the game very differently if they want to stay competitive. And
yeah,
that's probably going to be true for every role, but obviously most notably for tanks. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely too early to tell where exactly we're going to land at the end of the day. We don't know what the game's going to look like still, so we don't know what's going to be needed of teams at a pro level or even just in general ranked games. So all this is worrisome, to say the least, for a lot of people, but I think end of the day, there's still going to be a very deep understanding of the game that needs to be found at pro level at least, where I definitely agree with Gunther a little bit that you're going to want some depth to your rosters to be able to cover as many bases as you can, right? And if I was like building a team for next year and I knew Overwatch 2 was coming out, I would not be comfortable with a solo tank.
Oh yeah,
I agree. I completely agree.
Yeah.
There will be at least one team with one tank.
Oh yeah,
I'm calling it so.
Guarantee you, fucking current LA Valiant would have rocked up with one tank.
Yeah, and freaking Vancouver Titans have already cut Fried Wiener in preparation for Overwatch 2. Sorry, Fried Wiener.
Yeah, what a world, man. But yeah, I guess we are coming up on our hour, so I do have one final question before we open up to a couple questions from the audience before we wrap things up. What are some changes that you're expecting to see that we didn't see from the developer review? Like whether that's like tanks we didn't see being reworked, how CC is going to work that we talked about earlier. What are you predicting?
I was just kind of so initially watching the developer reveal, I was like, new maps, new heroes, cool. And then we didn't get any of that. We got hell. We got hell on earth.
Hey, we got what's the race car map again?
Yeah, fucking whatever.
Monte Carlo?
Sure. Sounds awesome. So I'm just hoping we get more like meaty content kind of stuff. I'm expecting us to hear about more of the tank changes, maybe a couple new heroes, but I want to know more of the specifics about PvE. And I want, because I like PvE games, they're kind of
Same.
fun. And I want to know more of the like, and I mentioned it, but like I want to hear more of the specifics and how they're changing the game around 5v5. And if we're gonna get a beta or a playtest anytime soon, because that's what we need.
Not a chance. Sorry.
Nope. They
I
they basically shot
strongly
that
doubt.
down.
Yeah.
They shot
Doubt,
that down.
yeah. Hope, maybe.
Yeah, I can hope alongside you, but I'm not holding my breath. What about you, Deadly? Any thoughts?
Yeah, for me, I'm expecting massive changes for the characters that we didn't see. If we're talking about like one things I did want to note, like you have down Orisa and Sigma, right?
Yeah, those,
With
we didn't see either of them.
Orisa is not going to be an anchor tank in Overwatch 2. I can guarantee that. She's not going to sit there and shoot her gun behind a shield. Like, bro, I'm expecting she better be some freaking cavalry. I want to see if McCree can like ride her into battle. I think that would be dope.
She should have like an ultimate where like she becomes, you know how like Bob runs forward and then flips someone up? She should have that as a move.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. She should have a charge, like runs in there, and you know, and I think
dude, she's gonna have a rickshaw hand cart.
I'm picturing like McCree riding around on Orisa, just like one tapping people, riding around with Deadeye proc to just.
Yep, she's going to have a mount option. I can call that one. Sigma. They're gonna, I mean, obviously changes Rock, I think, is because once again, and make him more, I don't know, probably, hopefully they rein him back a bit and take away some of his utility and make him more focused. I think make the tanks focused to have a I don't know, a reason to play that tank. And then yeah, like I said, CC changes, and I think they've got to change a lot to make the game work, in my opinion, without an extra tank. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm hoping we get caught off guard by some changes. To be honest, I hope there's
I really hope
see
so
coming
too.
at all. Whether that's in the form of like new hero mechanics or hero reworks and stuff like that. But
yeah, didn't they mention that there was like some pretty big content for Overwatch 1 coming like imminently, or some announcement?
He did say something like
that.
that.
And that was like,
they said that like a while ago,
that.
and they haven't brought it up again. So I feel like maybe they. I don't know.
He said it was soon, very soon,
soon,
which is like, I think the Reddit detectives determined from past soon and very soon announcements that it's going to be somewhere between like 3 to 6 months.
So maybe in the fall, maybe when BlizzCon normally is in November.
Yeah. Also, one thing that is kind of funny we didn't really point out, because not only do they have all of these massive changes for 5v5, they're supposedly supposed to be releasing 5 or 6 new heroes or something with Overwatch 2.
Yeah, which is gonna be crazy.
Which is gonna be crazy on top of all of the balance stuff that they already have to do. So maybe I hope that they were keeping in mind 5v5 when they are creating these other characters, or else they're going to have an entire smorgasbord of characters that they're going to have to deal with for Overwatch 2 5v5.
My big worry about the heroes we didn't see during the broadcast, namely like Sigma, Orisa, who else didn't we see? Brig. Did we see Brig?
Yeah, Brig. No, I don't think so.
We didn't see Brig. We didn't see a bunch of characters with CC.
Yes.
My worry is that I hope they're actively reworking these characters and they didn't just disable them because internally they deemed them too good for the current patch. Because I feel like, especially imagine Orisa in a gold game as the solo tank, you'd never get anything done.
Yeah.
There'd just always be an Orisa there. You just put Orisa on card and you'd lose the game. And like Sigma, I think in his current state, in their current Overwatch 2 state, would just be the best tank in the game by far. Because we're seeing these like ball Sig comps, and unless you can play ball at a high level, I think Sig is like by far the easiest and most flexible tank to play in that sort of atmosphere where you can still be very flexible with your position and still be threatening at range. Obviously, the Rock is a potential mix-up, but
he just does everything.
Exactly.
He would be like
the
perfect
best solo
tank
tank
for 5v5. Yep. Because
Exactly.
he's self-sustainable as well.
Mm-hmm.
His kit allows him to survive and do damage and do
be
everything.
Threatening and control space, like all these things all at once that no other tank can do. Because no other tank was designed to be a solo tank. Crazy.
Wow, that's crazy how that works.
I do have a bit of a hot take prediction, and I think I've talked to you guys about this before, and you shut me down and told me to shut up before Blizzard hears me. But I've been thinking for a long time now, and going 5v5, I think would make this a better idea. That PvE is going to leak into PvP. Some of the mechanics from PvE are going to leak in, and the one that makes sense for this is going to be a talent system similar to Heroes of the Storm. And
I actually think that lines up really well with the whole designating 5 specific roles thing.
yeah.
I'm not
You can
against
fit more-
that.
you can
Whatever.
pigeonhole yourself even more, or go more flexible all-rounder type
generous.
hero.
That's one of those things that sounds way harder to balance, but in the randomness of that, it would kind of balance itself out.
Yeah, because you have more variables to work with.
Exactly. It's not just this character is too strong. It's that character is really strong, so I'm gonna build this other thing to counter it.
Mm-hmm.
They have
And
too
I
much
think-
CC. I'm gonna spec into CC denial, like that kind of stuff.
For sure. The reason I think this is more interesting for Overwatch 2 with one tank is because I think tanks need some sort of scaling, or they're going to be overpowered. Again, if they try to balance the game around Reinhardt, and Reinhardt's allowed to walk out the gate and be threatening, that's not okay. I don't think that's a good direction. But if he has to like earn talent points throughout the course of a game, I don't know how this system would look at all. So don't ask me about it.
Need to be longer.
Or the talent
hopping
systems
into a
would
whole
be
other
like
game design
dynamic, where
conversation.
you'd be like, you would change them up every death or something.
Pick a rune in mastery before you start the game.
Oh no, we're gonna have to pay for them
Yeah,
too.
yeah, you have to buy
Oh,
spellbook
God.
pages.
I feel like we should stop before somebody at Blizzard
Yeah,
takes notes.
but like
cut the tape. Cut it.
there's no like economy like there is in CS:GO or Valorant. There's no items like there are in League or Dota. There's no scaling in this game other than ultimate economy and positioning. And that doesn't feel like enough for a tank, to the point where tanks are going to be either too good or absolute trash.
Yeah,
That's
I think we
just-
talked.
that's my take.
Yeah.
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 And I know it
that's
sounds
good.
awful for current
It's
Overwatch,
interesting.
but I bet Blizzard
It's
could whip out
interesting.
a system that models around that, because obviously they're already experimenting with how heroes function.
I
yeah.
just want to poke at just really quickly before we wrap up. There's this whole idea of like, have faith in Blizzard. They'll do something great. I have hope. I have zero faith.
So the thing about Blizzard in my eyes is like they're really good at making products and then really bad at marketing them and maintaining them.
Yeah, the maintaining is the issue.
Yeah. They have done
StarCraft
an
2.
amazing job with Overwatch as a product, as a whole. But the fact that we saw Goats for a year, the fact that Brig was released,
like
the fact
Goats.
that Moth Meta lasted for 3 months, like, they don't know what to do with their hands full, I feel like.
Yeah,
And that's what's
they
worrying.
They make a thing and then they say, "Don't you guys like the thing? We're gonna keep touching it." And then everyone says, "No, stop! Just give us more." And they're like,
Yeah.
"But what if we changed it?" We're like, "No, just give us more."
Yeah. So
It's like-
with a full release of Overwatch, do you think it's going to be like more the case of them trying to build more on Overwatch, or do you think it's going to be more like a brand new release?
It's gonna. Fuck, I have no clue.
That's the $1 million question right now. Because if it's like
I
a
thought
brand
I
new
had an
release,
answer.
it's going to be sick right off the bat until people start poking at it deeply and stuff like that. Because if it's like not completely different, obviously, but like if it's different enough from Overwatch 1 that it feels like a brand new game, I think they're going to do a stellar job of releasing Overwatch 2. But if it's just a glorified DLC patch, who really knows how it's going to feel? But yeah. So we're a bit over our regular scheduled time. I do want to get a few questions from the audience in. So I'm going to open up requests right now, and we have like 5 million people looking to ask questions already. Hi, guys. We'll get through a few of these, and then we'll get started with our 5v5 pug lobbies. So let's get started with Fohammer, bringing you in now.
What heroes and other roles do you feel like will be very weak going into 5v5?
Close range damage dealers.
Soldier sucks.
I feel like soldiers' stocks are going through the roof with only one tank, actually.
Think
Consistent damage at long range, mid to long range.
Yep. And cannot be
I think
stopped
range
with
is gonna be
stuff
king.
with The diva. There's not going to
Yeah.
be a diva and Sigma in
This
this
is gonna be
face.
Diva. I keep forgetting about that because they made a bad decision. Whatever.
Yeah, I think long range damage is going to be king. So anything short range, Reaper. I mean, Doomfist has potential just because of one shot potential. Symmetra, I don't know, Moira, anyone that only does stuff
Moira's
at
gonna
short
have
range.
issues.
Yeah.
Moira, Reaper, and Sim, I think, are going to be the 3 biggest. And because the fact that teams aren't going to be clumped up anymore, Junkrat might have some issues.
Mm-hmm. I could
'Cause you're
still
not
see
gonna have that
Junkrat
same
decent for
push per same
space
stroke.
control, but not for actually doing damage. Like, you wouldn't want to push into a Junkrat, and teams are going to want to push as like solo DPS now. So if you're like randomly walking to a corner and you're faced with a Junkrat, no other DPS can deal with that. That's the only niche situation I see Junkrat working on, like defense. Same with like Torb, I suppose. Like, he can lock down an area and provide consistent damage during
Torb might still be really good, actually.
Yeah, because he got good poke and stuff like that.
Sixth man.
Yeah, the real 6th man. Then you play Torb Ashe, so you can play true Overwatch with more heroes on the field.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, the short range specialists, I guess, would be the first on the chopping block in my eyes.
Good to know. Not playing any short range hero today in PUBG.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it feels.
Nuts. I think Tracer's going to be insane.
Yeah, for the same reason, because like no one wants to dual Tracer, so you get forced into because everyone's going to be looking to take 1v1s and 5v5, because you're not going to have support from your tank. Supports are going to be off doing their own thing probably, or they're just going to be hiding forever because they're super vulnerable with only one tank. So, DPS 1v1s are going to be very, very important.
I personally think everyone is just either going to flock to tank, and then suddenly the queue time for tank is going to be incredibly high, or everyone's going to play it, get flamed because they're the only one taking the brunt of the flame, and then no one's going to play it. That is my prediction.
That's your hot take.
For that.
Yeah,
yeah, that's my.
I 100%
and then
agree.
I was going to say, how would you fix queue times?
Make the game fun to play every single
tanks
role.
Fun to play, yeah. End of the day, tanking as it currently exists in most games, MMO is probably the easiest example, is not a fun role. Just flat out. Yeah. It's not fun taking hits and not having a lot of agency over your character and being pigeonholed into this one type of role. You want to be flexible, you want to have agency over your actions, you want to be able to make an impact, you want to be able to do big damn, all this kind of stuff, which tanks just don't get to do a lot of the time. So I don't know how you would balance tanks. I mean, if you were to rework tanks and still keep Overwatch 6v6, they still wouldn't feel like tanks, and you still wouldn't see the skill sets that we're currently seeing. They would just feel like bruiser DPS.
Yeah, because they wanted to call them brawlers, didn't they? And then just make it so that they were aggressive fat peoples. But I don't know. I just feel like that kind of swerves the problem rather than trying to deal with it.
Yeah, it's treating a symptom, not the cause.
Yeah.
And what sucks is like these kind of interactions are what make the game so interesting at the highest level, but are also the reason people don't like the role, because to learn that intricacy, you need a lot of synergy with another player, a lot of game knowledge, which is not a fun thing to acquire unless you're a very competitive person, and it's not intuitive. It takes a lot of work to learn these tank-specific skill sets that exist right now, and it's not fun to learn them.
Yeah, that's why it's kind of like split into main and off at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah.
For the whole of the Overwatch.
Yeah, Deadly Gunther, thanks again for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Really good. I enjoyed talking Overwatch 2 with you guys, and I'm sorry we made you late for dinner, Gunther.
Look, if my mom is mad at me, I'll tell her to take it up with you.
You know what, Gunther?
Take
Just
it
tell
up
your
with
mom
my
I say hi.
boss. Yeah.
No, but this is good. This is good.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. And these are things we've been talking about internally and like been on our mind for a while. So I'm glad we got some time to talk about this, share our thoughts with the world.